Thousands of people came to watch Bruce Lee win. But that night, they came to watch him lose. The crowd didn't know it yet, but they were about to witness a fight Bruce Lee would remember for the rest of his life. Not because he was defeated, not because he was injured, but because, for the first time, Bruce Lee would face an opponent who seemed to know what he was going to do before Bruce himself decided to do it. The arena was packed. Men stood on their seats. Money changed hands in the shadows. People shouted Bruce Lee's name. Some laughed. Others were already celebrating a victory that hadn't happened yet, because nobody expected the mysterious woman waiting in the opposite corner to last more than a few seconds. She didn't look dangerous. She wasn't large. She wasn't surrounded by a team of trainers. She had no championship belt, no famous name, no reputation anyone in the arena recognized. She simply stood there, wearing a black fighting uniform, her dark hair pulled tightly behind her head, her hands relaxed at her sides. She looked almost completely calm. Too calm. A man in the front row laughed. "Bruce could beat her with one hand!" The crowd exploded with laughter. Another voice shouted, "Don't hurt her, Bruce!" More laughter. Bruce heard every word, but he didn't smile. He didn't even look at them. His eyes remained fixed on the woman. Something about her bothered him. It wasn't her stance. It wasn't her size. It wasn't even her expression. It was the way she stood. There was no nervous movement, no unnecessary breathing, no shifting of weight, nothing. She looked like someone who had already fought this battle in her head and already knew the ending. Bruce slowly narrowed his eyes. The woman noticed, and for the first time, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not an arrogant smile, a knowing smile. Bruce's expression immediately became serious. The referee stepped between them. "Ready?" Bruce nodded. The woman said nothing. The crowd began counting. 3, 2, 1. The bell rang, and the woman vanished. The laughter died instantly. She exploded forward with frightening speed. A straight punch shot toward Bruce's face. Bruce slipped to the side. The punch missed by inches. The crowd gasped. Bruce immediately countered. His fist moved toward her shoulder. She was already gone. Bruce turned. Another strike came from the opposite side. He blocked it. A kick followed. Bruce shifted backward. Another punch. He moved. Another. He moved again. The crowd stopped cheering. Nobody was laughing anymore. Bruce stared at her. She wasn't simply fast. She was anticipating him. Bruce attacked again. She moved before his strike fully developed. He changed direction. She changed with him. He feinted. She didn't react. Instead, she watched. Bruce's shoulders, his hips, his feet, his breathing, his eyes. Bruce suddenly stopped. The woman stopped too. The entire arena became silent. Bruce looked at her. "You've studied me." She shook her head. "No." "Then how do you know where I'm going?" She answered quietly. "Because you tell me." Bruce frowned. "I don't tell you anything." Her eyes never left his. "You do." She pointed toward his shoulders. "Your body speaks before you move." Then she pointed toward his eyes. "And your eyes speak before your body." Bruce said nothing. The woman took one step closer. "You're fast." A pause. "Very fast." Another step. "But you're still human." Bruce's expression changed. The crowd sensed it. Something had shifted. This wasn't entertainment anymore. This wasn't Bruce Lee humiliating an inexperienced challenger. This was a conversation, and they were having it with their fists. Bruce slowly raised his guard. Again. The woman nodded. The bell rang. This time, Bruce didn't move. He stood completely still. The woman advanced. She threw a jab. Bruce didn't react. The punch stopped inches from his face. A feint. Bruce's eyes sharpened. She attacked again. He slipped. A second strike came immediately. He blocked. A third came from below. Bruce stepped away. Then she kicked. Bruce caught the movement and shifted his weight. The woman suddenly stopped. Bruce stopped too. For several seconds, neither moved. Then Bruce smiled. He had found something. A tiny weakness. A fraction of a second. Every time she prepared to attack from one side, her left foot moved. Barely. A movement so small that almost nobody would notice it. But Bruce noticed. The woman saw his eyes drop toward her foot. Her smile disappeared. Bruce said quietly, "There you are." She understood. He had found her pattern. She attacked. Bruce stepped inside. She changed direction. Bruce followed. She threw a second strike. He blocked. She tried to retreat. Bruce didn't let her create distance. For the first time, she was the one reacting. The crowd erupted. Bruce pressed forward. One movement. Another. Another. The woman blocked, then slipped, then blocked again. Bruce was beginning to control the rhythm, but suddenly, she smiled. Bruce froze for half a second. That smile told him something was wrong. She had wanted him to see the weakness. She had wanted him to attack. The entire pattern had been bait. Her left foot moved again. Bruce reacted, and that was exactly what she wanted. She changed direction instantly. Her hand shot toward his ribs. Bruce barely blocked it. The impact forced him backward. The crowd roared. Bruce looked at her. She looked back. Neither smiled now. Bruce understood. This woman wasn't simply reading his movements. She was feeding him information. She was giving him patterns, just to see whether he would trust them. Bruce slowly exhaled. Then he lowered his hands. The woman stared at him. "Why did you stop?" Bruce answered. "Because you're trying to make me predictable." She said nothing. Bruce continued. "You don't want to beat me." Her eyes narrowed. "You want to understand me." Silence. Then the woman whispered, "Yes." Bruce nodded. "Then you've made one mistake." "What mistake?" Bruce stepped forward. "You assumed I would keep fighting the same way." The woman raised her guard. Bruce smiled. And the next exchange was completely different. He stopped attacking with rhythm. He stopped giving her patterns. He became unpredictable. One moment he moved forward. The next he disappeared sideways. A feint, a pause, a sudden burst, a retreat, then an explosive entry. The woman struggled to read him. For the first time, she was guessing. Bruce saw it. He stepped forward. She attacked. Bruce slipped. She changed direction. He was already there. She tried to rotate away. Bruce caught her wrist. The crowd exploded. The woman twisted. Bruce adjusted. She dropped her weight. Bruce released her. She spun. Bruce moved. Then, in one perfectly timed motion, Bruce stepped inside her balance. Her foot slipped, her body tilted, and suddenly, the woman who nobody had ever seen lose was falling. The arena went silent. Bruce reached out. He caught her before she hit the floor. He could have let her fall. He could have finished the fight. He could have stood over her while thousands of people celebrated. Instead, Bruce pulled her back to her feet. The woman stared at him. Bruce released her hand. For several seconds, she didn't move. Then she looked into his eyes, and something in her face changed. Not anger, not humiliation. Respect. She lowered her hands. Bruce did the same. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. But neither fighter celebrated. The woman stepped closer. "You could have finished me." Bruce shrugged. "You were falling." I know. Then why are you surprised? She stared at him. Because everyone who reaches that moment wants to win. Bruce looked at the crowd, then back at her. I don't. Her eyes narrowed. Why? Bruce answered, because winning isn't always the point. The woman was silent. Then she smiled. Now I understand. Bruce frowned. Understand what? Why they were afraid of you. Bruce's expression changed. Who? The woman didn't answer. Instead, she reached inside her uniform. She pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. She placed it in Bruce's hand. Don't open it here. Bruce looked down at the paper. What is this? An answer. To what? She stepped closer. To a question you haven't asked yet. Bruce stared at her. The crowd was still roaring around them. But suddenly it felt as if the entire arena had disappeared. Bruce unfolded the paper. There was only one thing written on it, an address. Bruce read it, once, then again. His face changed. The color seemed to leave it. The woman watched him carefully. Bruce looked up. How do you know about this place? She said nothing. Who sent you? Silence. Why did you bring me here? The woman finally answered, because you need to know what happened there. Bruce's jaw tightened. What happened there? She looked directly into his eyes. The night you stopped asking questions. Bruce froze. For a moment, the noise of the arena seemed to disappear completely, because Bruce knew that place. He hadn't been there in years. It belonged to a chapter of his past he rarely spoke about, a memory he had buried so deeply that he had almost convinced himself it didn't matter anymore. But someone had just dragged it back into the light. Bruce looked toward the woman. Who are you? She stepped backward. You'll find out. Where are you going? She turned toward the exit. I'm not the person you need to be afraid of. Bruce watched her walk away. Then she stopped. Without turning around, she said, But when you reach that address, a pause. Don't go alone. Bruce's eyes hardened. Why? The woman finally looked over her shoulder. Because someone has been waiting for you. Then she disappeared through the arena doors. Bruce stood alone in the center of the ring. Thousands of people were cheering. Cameras were flashing. The referee was calling his name. But Bruce heard none of it. He was staring at the piece of paper in his hand. And for the first time that night, Bruce Lee wasn't thinking about the woman he had just fought. He was thinking about the past. Because the fight hadn't been a challenge. It had been a message. The woman hadn't entered the ring to defeat Bruce Lee. She had entered the ring to find out whether he was ready. Ready for what? Bruce didn't know. But as he folded the paper and slipped it into his pocket, one terrifying thought crossed his mind. Maybe the woman hadn't been testing whether Bruce Lee could win. Maybe she had been testing whether he could survive what was coming next. And somewhere beyond that mysterious address, someone was already waiting in the dark. Bruce Lee had spent years learning how to recognize danger. A clenched fist, a sudden movement, a change in breathing, a man looking too long at the door. But the address written on that piece of paper frightened him for a completely different reason. It wasn't a place he feared. It was a place he remembered. And sometimes, the most dangerous places aren't the ones where someone is waiting to attack you. They're the places where your past is waiting for you. The next evening, Bruce drove alone. No assistant, no friends, no students. He kept the paper on the passenger seat. He had read the address so many times that he no longer needed to look at it. As the city disappeared behind him, the roads became darker. Buildings became fewer. Streetlights disappeared. Eventually, Bruce reached an old dirt road surrounded by trees. At the end stood a building. Small, wooden, almost completely abandoned. Bruce stopped the car. For several seconds, he simply stared. He remembered this place. Not clearly, not completely, but enough. A training hall, a winter evening, a younger version of himself, and a man whose face Bruce had spent years trying not to remember. Bruce stepped out of the car. The wind moved through the trees. He walked toward the building. The front door was slightly open. That stopped him. Bruce looked around. No cars, no footprints, no lights. He pushed the door. It opened with a long wooden creak. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Bruce entered. The door slowly closed behind him. He stood completely still. Nothing. Then, a floorboard creaked behind him. Bruce turned instantly. Nobody. He looked toward the darkness. "Who's there?" Silence. Bruce took another step. Then he saw it. A photograph hanging crookedly on the wall. He moved closer and stopped. The photograph showed a group of young martial artists standing outside the building. Bruce recognized the place. He recognized some of the faces, but there was one person he didn't recognize. A young woman, standing at the edge of the group. Bruce stared at her. Something about her face felt familiar. Not because he remembered meeting her, because he remembered seeing those eyes somewhere else. He reached toward the photograph. Then he noticed something. Someone had scratched one face out, violently, again and again. Bruce lowered his hand. "Why?" A voice answered from the darkness. "Because he didn't want anyone to remember him." Bruce turned. The woman from the arena stepped into the room. The same black uniform, the same calm eyes, the same expression that had bothered him from the beginning. Bruce stared at her. "You followed me." She shook her head. "I was already here." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" She didn't answer. Bruce stepped closer. "You knew I'd come." "Yes." "You knew I'd recognize this place." "Yes." "You knew what happened here." Her silence was enough. Bruce looked at the photograph. "Who is he?" The woman walked toward it. For the first time, her expression became emotional. "My teacher." Bruce looked at her. "Your teacher?" She nodded. "He spent most of his life studying fighters." "Me?" "Especially you." Bruce's expression hardened. "Why?" "Because he believed you were dangerous." Bruce almost smiled. "I'm sure he wasn't the first." "No." She looked at him. "But he wasn't afraid of your strength." Bruce's smile disappeared. "What was he afraid of?" She answered. "Your ability to change." Bruce said nothing. She continued. "He studied your fights, your training, your footwork, your timing. He tried to find patterns." Bruce looked at the old photograph again. "And?" "He found them." A pause. "Then you changed." Bruce slowly nodded. She continued. "He found new patterns." "And I changed again." "Yes." The woman looked at him. That drove him crazy. Bruce walked toward an old wooden chest. "What's inside?" The woman didn't answer. Bruce opened it. Inside were notebooks, dozens of them. Some were covered in dust. Others looked surprisingly recent. Bruce picked up the first one. His name was written across the cover. Bruce Lee. He opened it. The first page contained drawings of his stance. The second showed his footwork. The third contained notes about his breathing. Then his hands, his shoulders, his eyes, his favorite combinations, his reactions under pressure, even the tiny movements he made before attacking. Bruce turned another page, then another. The room became colder. He studied me. The woman nodded. For years. Bruce looked at her. How? He watched. Where? Everywhere. Bruce closed the notebook. And you helped him? She looked away. Yes. Bruce's expression became hard. You were there? Yes. How old were you? She hesitated. Young. Bruce stared at her. And now? I know better. Bruce put the notebook down. Why bring me here? She walked toward him. Because I needed to know whether you were still the same. Bruce frowned. The same as what? The fighter my teacher feared. Bruce shook his head. You fought me last night. Yes. You could have attacked me harder. Yes. You held back. Yes. Why? She looked directly into his eyes. Because I wasn't trying to beat you. Bruce waited. I was testing whether you would become predictable when challenged. Bruce nodded slowly. And? She smiled faintly. You surprised me. Bruce looked at the notebook. Good. Then a sound came from outside. Footsteps. Both fighters froze. One step. Then another. Bruce turned toward the door. The woman whispered, They shouldn't be here. Bruce looked at her. Who? She didn't answer. Another footstep, closer. Bruce raised his hands. The woman did the same. The door opened. 3 men entered, all dressed in black. The first was tall. The second had a scar across his eyebrow. The third said nothing. They stood in the doorway. The tall man looked at Bruce, then smiled. So the legend finally came back. Bruce stared at him. Who are you? The man stepped inside. People who have been waiting. For me? For this moment. Bruce glanced at the woman. She looked genuinely frightened. That was the first thing that worried him. Not the men, not the darkness. Her reaction. She had never looked afraid in the ring. Now she was. The tall man noticed. You shouldn't have brought him here. The woman stepped forward. It's over. The man laughed. No. He looked at Bruce. It's just beginning. Bruce's eyes narrowed. What do you want? The man answered. To finish what our teacher started. Bruce's expression changed. Your teacher? The man nodded. The same man whose notes you're holding. Bruce looked down at the notebook, then back at him. Where is he? The man smiled. Dead. Silence. Bruce studied his face. Then why are you here? Because he left instructions. The man took a step forward. He said that one day Bruce Lee would return. Bruce's eyes hardened. And? He said that when you did, the man paused, we would know whether his greatest theory was correct. Bruce waited. What theory? The man smiled. That every fighter has a breaking point. Bruce looked at the woman. She lowered her head. Bruce understood. This is why you brought me here? She shook her head. No. Then why? I didn't know they would come. The tall man laughed. She didn't know because she was never told the whole truth. Bruce looked at him. What truth? The man pointed toward the woman. She isn't the person you fought. Bruce froze. The woman closed her eyes. Bruce turned toward her. What does he mean? She didn't answer. Bruce stepped closer. You told me your name. Yes. You told me about your teacher. Yes. You told me you studied me. Yes. Then what haven't you told me? The woman finally looked at him. Her eyes were filled with regret. The woman you fought, she swallowed, was my sister. Bruce stared at her. The room seemed to become completely silent. The woman in the ring wasn't me. Bruce's eyes moved slowly toward the door. The memory returned. The stance, the eyes, the smile, the way she moved. Bruce suddenly understood why something had felt familiar. He had seen those eyes before. Not in the woman standing in front of him, but in the photograph. Bruce turned toward the old picture. The young woman at the edge of the group. The same eyes. He looked back. Where is she? The woman didn't answer. Bruce's voice became colder. Where is your sister? The three men remained silent. Finally, the woman whispered, She disappeared years ago. Bruce stared at her. Disappeared? She left this place and never came back. Why? Her voice trembled. Because she discovered what my teacher was really doing. Bruce looked at the notebooks. What was he doing? He wasn't studying martial arts. Bruce frowned. He was studying people. She pointed toward the notebooks. He wanted to understand how fear changes a fighter. Bruce's expression hardened. He wanted to create the perfect opponent. No. She looked directly at him. He wanted to create the perfect test. Bruce stared at her. The tall man suddenly laughed. Now you're getting close. Bruce turned toward him. The man continued. You think this fight was designed to defeat you? He shook his head. The fight was designed to measure you. Bruce's eyes narrowed. Measure what? The man answered, Your fear. Bruce stood perfectly still. The man stepped closer. You were given a mysterious opponent. You were shown your own weaknesses. You were brought back to a place from your past. And now you're surrounded by people who know things about you that you never told them. He smiled. And yet, he looked at Bruce carefully. You still haven't attacked. Bruce said nothing. The man's smile faded. Why? Bruce answered calmly. Because you want me to. Silence. Bruce took one step forward. You've spent years studying how fighters react under pressure. Another step. You've built this entire room around one question. Another step. You want to know whether fear can control me. The man's face changed. Bruce smiled. But you made one mistake. What? You assumed fear makes a fighter weaker. Bruce lowered his hands. Sometimes. He looked directly into the man's eyes. Fear makes a fighter see more clearly. The three men attacked. Everything happened at once. The first man came from the left. Bruce moved. The second attacked from behind. Bruce turned, blocked, countered. The third came low. Bruce jumped back. The room exploded into movement. The men weren't ordinary fighters. They had trained for this. They moved together. One attacked, another closed the escape, the third waited for Bruce to react. Bruce recognized the strategy. It was the same philosophy as the woman in the ring: predict, control, punish the reaction. Bruce stopped. The men hesitated. That was enough. Bruce moved. One strike, one step, a turn. The first man hit the floor. The second attacked. Bruce slipped, caught his wrist, used his momentum. The man crashed into the wooden wall. The third charged. Bruce waited until the final moment, then moved aside. The man stumbled past him. Bruce caught his shoulder and sent him to the floor. Silence. All three men were down. Bruce stood in the center of the room, breathing calmly. The woman stared at him. but the tall man was laughing. Bruce looked down. "What is funny?" The man wiped blood from his mouth. "You still don't understand." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "What?" The man reached inside his jacket. The woman suddenly shouted, "Bruce!" Bruce turned. The man pulled out a photograph. He dropped it onto the floor. Bruce looked down, and his entire expression changed. The photograph showed Bruce Lee years earlier, standing beside a man he recognized. But there was someone else in the photograph, a young woman, the same woman from the ring. Bruce stared at it, then looked at the woman standing across from him. The woman was crying. Bruce slowly whispered, "You said she disappeared." "She did." "Then how is she in this photograph?" The woman said nothing. Bruce picked it up. He turned it over. There was writing on the back, one sentence. "She didn't disappear." Bruce's heart sank. He looked at the woman. "Where is she?" The woman finally answered. Her voice was barely audible. "She has been waiting for you." Bruce froze. "Where?" The woman looked toward the mountains outside, then whispered, "At the place where your story with her began." Bruce stared at the photograph, and suddenly he understood something terrifying. The fight in the arena hadn't been the beginning. It had been the final test. The woman hadn't come to discover whether Bruce Lee could defeat her. She had come to discover whether he was ready to meet the person who had been studying him, long before Bruce Lee ever knew she existed. Bruce folded the photograph, then looked toward the dark doorway. Somewhere beyond those trees was the next answer. And for the first time in years, Bruce Lee was walking toward an opponent he couldn't understand. Not because she was stronger, not because she was faster, but because she knew something about his past that Bruce himself had forgotten. And the next time they met, there would be no audience, no referee, no bell, and no guarantee that Bruce Lee would walk away. Bruce drove into the mountains alone. The photograph sat beside him. On the back were only 4 words: "She has been waiting." By the time he reached the old wooden house, darkness had covered the mountains. The door was already open. Bruce stepped inside, and there she was, the woman from the ring. She stood in the shadows, completely calm. Bruce looked at her. "You knew I would come." She nodded. "Because you needed to know the truth." Bruce's expression hardened. "Then tell me." She slowly opened an old notebook. Inside were pages filled with drawings of Bruce's movements, his footwork, his timing, his breathing, even the smallest habits he had never realized he possessed. Bruce turned another page, then another. "He studied me for years." "Yes." "Why?" She looked into his eyes. "Because he believed every fighter had a weakness." Bruce closed the notebook. "And you?" "I was his student." Bruce stared at her. "Then why did you challenge me?" She answered quietly, "Because I needed to know if you had become predictable." Bruce smiled faintly. "And?" "You haven't." Before Bruce could respond, footsteps echoed outside, then another, then several more. The door opened. A group of men entered the room. Their leader stepped forward. "You passed the test." Bruce's eyes narrowed. "What test?" The man smiled. "To discover whether Bruce Lee could be manipulated." Bruce looked toward the woman, then back at him. "And now?" "Now, we discover whether you can defeat someone who knows everything about you." The man raised his hands. Bruce immediately noticed something. The stance, the breathing, the positioning of the feet. This man had studied Bruce Lee for years. He attacked. Bruce moved. The man predicted him. Bruce changed direction. The man adjusted. Bruce attacked again. The man countered. For several seconds, they moved almost like reflections of each other.
Then Bruce realized the truth. This man wasn't trying to overpower him. He was trying to become him.
Bruce suddenly stopped. The man froze.
"What are you doing?"
Bruce looked at him calmly. "You studied my techniques." "Yes." "My speed?" "Yes." "My philosophy?" "Yes." Bruce took one step forward. "But you made one mistake." The man's eyes narrowed. "What?" "You studied Bruce Lee." Bruce paused, then smiled. "You didn't study the man who refuses to stay the same." The man attacked again, but this time Bruce changed everything. No familiar rhythm, no predictable combination, no repeated movement. He became impossible to read. The man's strategy collapsed. Bruce slipped past his attack and stopped his fist just inches from the man's face. Silence. The man froze. Bruce slowly lowered his hand. "You tried to become me." He stepped back. "That was your weakness." The man lowered his head. The fight was over. The woman approached Bruce. "You understand now?" Bruce nodded.
"What?"
She smiled. "The strongest fighter isn't the one nobody can defeat." Bruce looked at her. "Then who is?" "The one who knows he can still learn." Bruce looked toward the mountains. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Bruce asked, "Why did you really bring me here?" She answered, "Because one day you will face someone you cannot predict." Bruce smiled. "Then I'll learn." She nodded. "That is exactly why I chose you." Bruce turned toward the door. Before leaving, he stopped. "Will I ever see you again?" The woman smiled. "Only if you stop looking for me." Bruce laughed quietly, then walked into the morning light. No crowd had witnessed the final fight. No cameras had recorded it. No newspaper would ever tell the story. But Bruce Lee would remember that night for the rest of his life, because he had learned something more valuable than victory. Being unbeatable was never the goal. The real goal was to keep learning, to keep changing.
To remain humble enough to admit there was always something he didn't know. Bruce got into his car and looked at the mountain one final time. The woman was still standing in the doorway. Then the wind moved through the trees. He blinked. She was gone. Bruce drove away. Behind him remained the old house, the forgotten notebooks, and the secret of the woman nobody could defeat. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. A true fighter doesn't become powerful because nobody can defeat him. He becomes powerful because every time life gives him a reason to stop, he chooses to keep learning. And that night, Bruce Lee didn't just win a fight. He defeated the version of himself that believed he already knew everything.